Yeah. Hi, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah. Let's get started. So it seems like they will join in some time. So today we'll be discussing about how do we set the parameters. Okay. So then we'll be discussing about like how do we enable disable the test cases, setting the parameter and working on optionals. And then we have enabled or disabled. And after that, we'll look into the ignoring test cases. Okay. So ignore. How do we use this? Okay. So first and foremost thing is like we'll discuss about the parameters. The parameters is like, for example, uh, so you have 10 test cases. Okay. So 10 tests, the first 10 test is like, first 5 test cases that you want to execute in Chrome, and the second 5 tests you want to execute in Firefox. Okay. So what we have written condition like that, once we pass this like parameter in the test cases, that will execute this, 5 test cases in Chrome and 5 test cases in Firefox. Okay. But here we are hard coding. The thing is like what I'm going to do is like here in case of this parameters, what does they do is like they are going to help us in passing these parameters at the dynamically. Okay. Like dynamically during the runtime. During the runtime. Okay. So how do we set these parameters? Where do we set these parameters? Like we can set the parameters at suite level, test level. Okay. So we first see this parameters at suite level and test level, then we'll see that what exactly that can be done. Okay. So for this, you can go to the documentation and you can see how do we set the parameters. Okay. So test-ng. The documentation, and here you can see parameters from test-ng XML. Okay. So you can go here and you can see parameters. So under this parameter, you can see how do we set the parameters. Okay. So at test level, we have to set the parameter. Like if you want to pass first name, so you can pass it. How do we pass it here? See, suite level, we are passing it. Okay. So parameter name is equals to this and value is equals to this. And here you can see data source, you can pass multiple things. Okay. So if you want to pass multiple things, you can pass them multiple. And this is all about like you have a parameters. Okay. So it's the test-ng XML level. Okay. So here you can see what we are trying to do is like see first name and the value that we are passing. And you can pass multiple parameters also. I'll go back and try to see parameters in system properties. So you can set the system properties also, but this is related to the when we are using this Maven, so there we can set it, or else we can set it during the runtime also. And another thing is like parameters in reports that we can set the reports, but we don't use this all these things. So we'll try to see how do we set the parameters at the suite level and test level. Okay. Now we have written the code here. When we go to this base class, let me go to this base class. So this base class is there in the file upload. Okay. So I want to copy, for example, let me go to this file upload and base class. I want to copy it and I want to paste it here under the test-ng file. Okay. Now we got this base class. So base class test-ng. So what I want to do is like here you can see get browser, just passing this browser, and if this browser is equal to so and so, I'll be just invoking the browser. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is like I'll just use before method here. And I'm going to so before method. So what I'm going to do is like before method, I'm invoking the browser, and after method, I'll be closing that particular browser. Okay. So here I'm going to add it as like as you looked into like before method, after method, right? So after method, before method, when do they get executed? For every test, they are going to get executed. Okay. So here I'm just adding this annotation so that I can use this class here in the example. Okay. So for example, I'm going to take this one. See get browser, what I'm doing here. Get browser, I'm passing the parameter. Okay. I'm passing the parameter. So what I'm going to do is like, I'll change this method. Okay. So I'll change this method. So from where it is coming from the file upload. I'll just change this. Go to this. Okay. Let me just create a new class. Otherwise, I'll just use this class as like parameter example. Okay. Parameter example. I'm going to create, I'm going to convert this into a test engine. Okay. Convert to test engine. I'm going to place it under test engine XMLs slash param test engine. Here I'm coming. You can see I've created the XML file. Okay. So what we thought is like we want to set the parameters. Okay. So base class, what I'm going to do is like instead of using the string browser, so this string browser I want to get it from the parameter. So for that, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to use annotation called parameters, and in that annotations I'm going to set the browser. Okay. So what is that is like I'm going to set it's like browser. Okay, so this browser is like coming from the XML file. Where do we set this now? Here we are going to set. What do we set? We are going to add the parameter. Okay, parameter name is equals to browser and value is equals to pro. Okay, this is like at the suite level I'm setting. Okay, this browser and the browser whatever we are using at the base class should be same. Okay, so the name that we are using here and the name that we are passing as like parameter in the parameters should be same. Okay, so now it is not required. So in this case, you can ignore this. Okay. So before annotation, now this is not required. We need not to call this get browser because for every test, it's going to call this one. Okay. So here also, we need not to call this. Okay. This test is not required. Now what will happen? So we have set the parameter. Okay. So before annotation that we are using. So before method will be executed. I'll just close all this, which is not required. Okay. I'm putting this like this is a base class. This base class is extended by the parameter example, and parameter example is nothing but is a class which you want to execute. Okay. For every test before method and after method will be executed. Okay. So for this, first it will execute like before method, it will open the Chrome browser, then it will execute this code and it will close it. Again, it will open the Chrome browser and it will enter some data and close it. Okay. So we'll try to see that. Okay. If you want to set something here, so we have already set it, right? So we want to get the title of this book. Okay. So what I'm doing is like just setting the parameters. Okay. So if I set the parameter the suite level, we have like, for example, if you are taking, yeah, we'll go with the first one example, like what happens when we set the parameter at the suite level and what happens when we set the parameter at the test level. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'll go here and I'll try to execute this code. Okay. So what is that we are going to create? We have is like parameter example. So right click and execute this. So 2 times the browser will be opened. Okay. We have 2 test cases and we are using before method. Before method will, what it does is like it will open the Chrome browser and it will get the title of that Google page is something on pointer exception. Okay. Because the return value of this file upload based, okay, still it is taking some different. So here we have to change it. Okay. So this is not a file upload. This is coming from test engine. Okay. Test engine annotations. Yeah. Okay, Chrome browser, Chrome tracker is opening. Now it will open, close. Again, it will open because we have two tests. Before method and after method are used, right? So here, okay. So it did not pass the URL. So that is the reason why it is not able to find out. Let me just close it. And I'm going to pass the URL here also. Okay. So what is that URL? So this is the URL. So earlier we used to pass the browser from the test, but now we are passing the value of the browser from the test.ng XML. Okay. So now you see it is taking the Chrome and it is opening it. Now it will open the Chrome. It will enter some data and it will get the text title of it and it will close it. Okay. Now you see here. So what we get, go to this console and see this is like title of automation testing Google search and this is like a Google. Okay. So what exactly happened is like, guys, what I'm trying to do is like, here we have a method. Okay. So I'll try to copy this method. Okay. So it's getting confused here. So what I'll do is like, I'll copy this and I'm going to paste this one here in this. Now we need not to extend the base class at all. Okay. So base class extension is not required. So here get driver, we have another method that we have to pull it from here. Like get driver. Okay, these things I'm going to copy it here. Simply what I did is like, okay, we have get URL also. Get URL also, I'll just copy it. Okay. Now you can see WebDriver get browser. So WebDriver, what it is doing is now it's like get browser is like returning the WebDriver. So first what happens is like before method, it will execute this one, then it will return the get WebDriver. So get WebDriver will be loaded now. It will be like, a driver will be given here. After that, when I call this get URL, get driver.get URL. So what happens is like it's returning the driver, right? So it will invoke the get URL. So get URL and whatever you are passing as like a parameter here. In this get URL, go to this get URL. So this get URL will be loaded with us. Okay. So also next is like we have get elements also. For now, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to use e dot find element. Okay. So to just show you some examples here. So what I'm trying to do here is like first is like see what I've written. What I've written here is like I've written a simple piece of code here. So this piece of code, what it does is like it's going to invoke the browser. Browser from where we are getting it from the XML file. That's nothing but I'm setting is like a parameter. Okay. So I have two test cases. Okay. So for before method will be executed, before and after method will be executed for every test. Okay. So it will execute for this test and it will execute for this test. Okay. So rest of the things that we have already created. For example, if you want to get driver, what it does like it's going to return as a driver. Get URL, what it is going to return is like it's going to like get URL is like it's going to open the URL. Okay. So likewise, these methods will be called here inside this. Okay. Before method itself, it's going to call. Here you can see. So it's nothing but it's returning get driver. So once you get the driver, so then we are going to open the URL. Okay. So where are we using this URL? So here we are using. Okay. In this test, we are using get URL. Now it's similar to this case that we have discussed. Like I'm just calling this base class earlier. Now I'm not calling anything from the base class. I'm just putting everything inside this parameter example. But this is not a good approach. What we have to do is that we have to create a separate class for this annotations. Okay. So before method, after method, all these configurations, whatever you want to do for the test that is required. Now you see that it's like the similar thing that happened, right? Now you can see the result here. Okay. Both of the test cases are passing and you get the title of them. Okay. So parameters, we are passing these parameters from the suite level. Okay, suite level. Now let us consider I'm going to create another test. Okay, so this I'm naming it as like test 1 and this I'm naming it as like test 2. Okay, so now I will remove this parameter. Now go here and create another class. Okay, so we have already, okay, let me just create this parameter example. So here I'm going to give it as like 2. Okay, so we have same set of code here. Okay, we have same set of code. Now I'm trying to execute this XML file. Okay, so both the things, like whatever we have, like both the cases, like both the tests will be executed in Chrome. The first test 1, we have 2 test cases in it. Okay, under test 2, we have 2 test cases. Both has a similar example. Okay, both are like now opening the Google and getting the title. Another one is like opening the Google, enter something into search field, and then click on enter, and it will get the title of it. Okay. In certain cases, like see, now I want to execute. See what happened now. Test 1, it is executing this class. Under this class, we have 2 methods. Test 2, we have this class. Under this, we have 2 methods. So now my case is like I want to execute them in a different browsers. Okay. So different browsers. What I'm going to do is like I'll set it. So this one I want to execute in Chrome. Okay. So here I'll go and set it as like Chrome. And here I'm going to set it as like a Firefox. Okay. So when you want to execute your test cases in different browsers, then what we can do is like we can set it at the test level. If you don't set anything, okay, if you don't set anything for the test cases, okay, so you want to execute them in a Chrome browser or any other browser, okay. So in that case, what we have to do is like we have to define at the suite level. Suite level will consider the browser for all the test cases, all the tests that we have created. Okay, if we are creating some like if you are passing parameter at the test level, so this suite level will be overridden by the parameters that we are passing as part of like test. Okay, so here it will Chrome, it will override the Chrome. Anyways, Chrome we have, but here it will override the Chrome with Firefox. Okay, now you see the difference here. So second test, it will be executed in Firefox. See, first one as usual, it's going to execute in Chrome. Okay, first 2 test cases. Now you see from third test, what happens is like it will open the Firefox code. You see Gecko driver, it is opening. So what is the use of this parameters? Like dynamically we can send the browser types. Okay, whatever like username, password, whatever we want to send, that will be sent dynamically. Okay, all 4 test cases are passed, but this will be invoking. So you can see, sorry, here, go here, and you can see this is invoking the Firefox driver. Okay, so one is invoking the Firefox driver, the other one is invoking the Chrome driver. Okay, so you can see we got this Google. On top of it, you got this Google. See, this is for the Chrome. Okay, so now you can go here. We did not set these things here. Okay, we will know this. So now we can apply whatever you want. Like Firefox, what it is doing, it went here and it's try to applying all these things, and after it is returning the get driver. So in the same class you can see now. Okay, if you are not giving anything here, if you are giving only at test level, okay, so then it will work as expected. Okay, so I'll show you another example. For example, we have another test method. Okay. So this test method I did not define anything. Okay. I did not define anything here. I'm not setting any parameter for the test. So by default, what it has to do? For example, I'll just set the parameter here as like a edge. Okay. So last one I did not set anything. Okay. So last test we have, I did not set any parameter to this test. Okay. So now I'm going to execute. So first one, it should be executed in Chrome. Second one, it should be executed in Firefox. Third one is like by default suite level, what we have defined is like Edge. It will be executed in Edge. We'll open Firefox for this. Now you see, automatically it will open the Edge browser. Okay, so you see this, right? So what is happening here? So first one is like executed in Chrome because we have set the parameter at the test level, and second one executed at the Firefox. But third one we did not define anything, so it is taking the default thing, which is set as part of like a suite. Okay. Now consider an example. So here I'm not setting any value. Okay, I'm not setting any value here at the parameter level. Okay, so now I'll try to go and execute it. So last one, do you see that what is happening? No such browser found. Okay, no such browser found. So we don't have any browser here. Okay, let us take like see. No such browser found here also. Test one. Okay, so here you can see. What I'm going to do is like I'll remove this parameter also. Okay, so this parameter also. Because this is empty, so that is the reason it is going and trying to set that parameter. Okay, here you see. Ignore case, we are using ignore case, that is the reason why it is set. Now I am not setting any parameter. I'm trying to execute this. Either we have a suite level, we don't have anything at the test level also. Okay, it is executing fine in Chrome. It is executing Firefox in executing Firefox because we have given the Firefox. And last test is like, we'll see what happens with the last test. We did not set any parameter over there. See, last test, what it says is like it's skipping. Okay. So it's skipping and it is giving the warning as like browser is required before method get browser, but not has been marked as optional. Okay. Not has been marked as like optional. Sometimes what happens is like we are, see, in test to do, where is that? In test case? Yeah, test to do. In test to do, I decided to have this browser passed from the XML file. Okay. But the thing is like sometimes you forget, or for example, you may not like specify this parameter at the test level or suite level. Okay. If you did not specify anything in the test level, if it is specified at the suite level, it will consider this parameter. For example, you are setting parameters like Chrome, it will be executed in Chrome. And if you did not set at suite level and you did not set at the test level, then what happens is like there is no browser for it. Okay, there is no browser for it. So in that cases, what it is telling is like put some optional browser, at least like if some browser is not set at the XML file. Okay, in that case, I want to execute those test cases as like the browser which are set as part of like optional. Okay, so where do we set this optional? So we have to set at the before method. Here we have to set. Okay, how do we set is like we have to use the annotation called optional. Optional, and we have to give the value for this. Okay, optional. What is that optional that you want to execute? You want to execute it in Edge. Okay, so for example, you want to execute it in Edge because we have already passed this. So now you see, I'm going to add it as like a optional. Okay, if I don't set the parameter at the suite level, test level, in that case also what it does is like it will go and execute this test in Edge. Okay, let's go and execute. Now you don't get to see that exception. Okay, if any parameter is not set suite level, not set at suite level or test level, then what it does is like it will go and take the optional parameter. Okay, this is executed in Firefox. Now finally, it will execute in C. What is happening now? It is executing in Edge. Okay, if you set the parameter, that is fine. If you don't set the parameter, then what happens is like it will go and execute in Edge because we have given the optional parameter. Okay, so now you see all the test cases are passing, right? So, but the last test case, which is not set as like any parameter is not set to this test, but still it is executing. So on basis of like the optional parameter. So here we are setting is like optional, it's executing Chrome, executing Edge. Okay. So here if it is not matching with anything, it will go and try to match with the Edge and it will execute it. Okay. So that's nothing but optional parameter. So parameters like we can set the parameter at the suite level and test level. So suite level will be considered as the topmost priority will be given to the topmost priority when if these parameters not set at the test level. If you are setting at the test level, then this suite level parameter will be overridden. Okay, so if we are not providing any parameter at suite level and test level, then we have to set the optional parameter. Okay, so optional parameter. So if nothing is given as part of like parameter from the XML file, then we have to give the optional parameter at the test level. Okay, so that's nothing but before test we are going to specify it. Please execute them in Edge. That is what we are specifying. Okay, are you clear with this, guys? Okay, so what is that is like I'll just show you the diagrammatically I'm going to show. So suite level, if you set the parameter, it will be considered. Okay, if you set the parameter at the suite level, this is like priority one, P1 I'm just saying. Okay, so priority one. If you are setting at the test level, test parameter, this will be set as like a P1. Okay, signed overrides suite level parameter. Okay, so suite level parameter. So here what I'm going to do is like I'll try to create, we have already have this base class, right? So I'm going to use this base class, and this from this base class I am going to use this methods. Okay, so I'll create a simple program. So with the help of like two things that we are going to execute, parameters and optional parameters. Okay, so this is like login page. Okay, so login page extends base class. Okay, so extends base class. So here I'm going to write test public void login. Okay, so login. First one is like what I'm going to do is like I'm going to get the get URL and URL I'm going to paste it from this. Okay. See, after that, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to get the element. Import this. This is the element. Okay. So we have this username. What do we write the XPath input? That name is equals to username. Okay. So we got this. So I will take this one. I'm going to give it as like a parameter. Okay. So this may throw the exception. So here I got the element uname. So it will return with the web element, right? So here, what I'm going to do is like enter text. Okay. So enter text. I want to use the element of. Okay. So uname. And what is the text that we are going to use like admin? Okay. So I'll do the same thing for the other one also. PSWD. And here it is like password. So PSWD and the password is like 123. And other one also I'm going to, it's like I need to click on this, right? Login button. So button, and we have type submit. Control C, Control F. Button red is equals to submit. The T is given here, so that is the reason why it is not there. I'll change the XPath of it. Submit. So what is it? This is the click action. Okay. Now you see what is that we are getting. Now I want to pass this one as like admin and admin2 as like a parameters. So what I need to do is like I'll be setting as like a parameters here. Okay. Parameters. So what is that we want to set the parameter? We want to set the parameters of two things. One is like username and password. We have to import from the testng.org. Okay. So this is what we have to import. Okay. From here, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to pass the parameter in PSWD. Okay. So now you see username, PASSWD, password. Okay. So this username will be passed here and this password will be passed here. Okay. From where we are getting these things? We are getting from the different login page. So I'm going to create a separate testng XML file. Okay. So login, I'll say login.xml. So here I'll click on finish. I'll get that file created here. I'll just open this. What is that? We want to pass a parameter now. You want to pass a parameter as like, what are the parameters that we need to pass now? Parameters, name is equals to browser. First is like browser, value is equals to Chrome. Okay, one parameter we have. And how many parameters that we want to pass as like here in this suite? Another was like name, PSWD, here admin, and here we have admin 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 parameters. Okay, the runtime what it does like it will go and consider these 3 parameters. So now we have like username and password. Username and password is here, and browser is like browser. We are getting it from this particular base class. Okay, so I'm extending the base class from this class. Okay, I'll just close the rest of the things. Let's say login. So we are passing 3 parameters. Okay, runtime it should consider this. So how do we run this now? Right click on this, run as testng.org, testng.xml. Okay. Okay, what it says. Switch level parameter. Name. We are trying to set the parameters at this level. It name value. We are setting the parameters here. Let me execute it again. Right click on this. Oh, where is that class? Actually, we did not define the classes, right? So that is the reason why it is not considered. Sorry for that. I just overlooked it. So class name. I need to define the class name, right? So it's not throwing any error, but still we did not define the class name. So it should consider because I've created dynamically, right? I did not see it. So here login page. So from where we are getting it from this location. Dot login page. Okay, now you can see we have classes here. We are trying to execute it. It should open the Chrome browser now and enter the username password. Still loading. It is started. It's okay. And then the failure it is showing. Method login requires 2 parameters, but 1 parameter was supplied at test. Okay, so it seems like I've passed it as like 1 parameter here. I need to pass it as like a multiple parameter. So Okay, so it's like two parameters that I need to supply. I missed out one comma here. Okay, it open Chrome browser. It has to enter username and password. Then click on submit. From where it is getting username and password, we are passing it as like a parameter at the suite level. Still loading. See now, it's very fast. It just there's nothing but see admin 1 to 3. Do you see these values from where these values are coming? These values are coming from these parameters. Okay, so what I will do is like I'll create another test here. So test 1 should be executed in Firefox, Chrome, and test 2 should be executed in. So here I'm setting parameters like Firefox. Okay, if you don't set any parameter at the suite level, what we have to do is like we have to give the optional. Where is that optional that we have to specify? Here is the optional that we have to specify. How do we specify? It's that optional, and we have to give here we have to specify. Just click on this string, and here we have to specify the optional. Okay, so now it will be considered as like H. If I don't specify anything here, it will be considered as like H. Okay, go to this. Now remove this parameter. One should be executed in Firefox. Okay, let me just take the first one in Firefox, and second one should be executed in Edge. Now there is no Chrome. Okay, because we are not passing any parameter for the Chrome. Now right click. So what are the two things which will be passed as like parameter admin 1 to 3. Okay, but two other things are like one is like taken as Firefox, another one is like Edge. I see first one will open in Firefox. Page is getting loaded. Admin password, clicked on enter. That's how they but submit. Second one is opening in Edge. You see, this one is like opening in Edge. Okay, it is also passed. Like it's very fast that it's clicked on. You see, what are the values that we are passing here? Okay. Now here, in case like I want to capture after method, if I want to capture some screenshot. Okay, because of the failure. Okay, how do we catch it now? So here I'm going to use. Okay, this is little advanced. Okay, we'll discuss later. First, you see that what is happening here is like it's like kind of using username and password, and it's like clicking on the submit button. Okay, so okay, it should click on the submit. After that, we'll wait for 2 seconds. Okay, for some seconds. Okay, at least like 5 seconds, so that you can see what is the page it is navigating. Okay, let me execute it again. It is clicking on this, opening this dashboard. We'll close it. Surname, password, submit. Okay. Now you see it is successfully entering. Okay. So this is how we'll be testing this guy. So this, how do we apply the parameters? How do we set the parameters at tweet level? Is like we are going to set the parameters like this. This parameter should be passed as like a parameters with the help of like annotation. Okay, wherever you want to pass. Like for example, if you want to pass it the before method, you have to give it before it. Okay. So at the test level, if you want to pass the parameters, you can pass the parameters here. Okay. So multiple parameters will be given like this and single parameter will be given like this. Okay. So optional case is like if you want to set something optional. For example, here also if you want to set the optional. Okay. So it's not mandatory that you want to set the optional. Here also we can set the optional. Okay. If nothing is given. So in this case, if you want to have something like defined here, open admin. Okay. So here also you can set it admin 1, 2, 3. See these parameters I'm setting it at one test level. Okay. Suite level I did not define anything, and here also we did not define any test case. So it should automatically take the parameters, optional parameters. Okay. Now you see. First test we are passing parameters. Okay. So in Firefox it should accept 2 parameters. Like altogether we have set all 3 parameters, right? So it's going to execute in Firefox. So second set would be executing in Edge with default parameters, whatever we have set as like options. Admin 1, 2, 3, click on it, submit. Okay. So this is how we'll be setting the parameters. And in case of optionals, how do we define optionals? You have to define optionals like this. Okay. So if you forget to give the password and username here. So if you give everything at suite level, so then this will be considered at the suite level. Okay. 2 things I want to pass it as like parameters here and here also. If same set of parameters we have and we're not changing anything, in that case we can go and define. Okay, if they are constants, username password would be constant all the time. Okay, so that we are going to pass it as like a parameter. Sometimes it's like if you want to pass it as like a this one, you want to pass it as like a parameter. Okay, URL and all. So this will not be changed anytime. Like for example, if you are using any application, so most probably we are not going to change our URLs. So in that case, we are going to set it as like a parameter. Okay, so here you can add the parameter. So this would be at the suite level. So I'm going to add browser as well as like URL as a parameter. This we are not changing anytime, right? So that is the reason why we are adding it as like a parameter here. So we can give URL as a value. URL. Be changing this one to URL. So here, and the sequence is important. Okay, so because we are passing parameters, those parameters should be taken in sequence. Now you go and execute this. showing line number 4, column 2, the mark where the document follows the root element must be well formed. What is the root element that we have? Parameter name Firefox, value that we are giving. Suite name. Just a param value. This. What is the issue here? You terminated this. That is the reason why it is throwing the error. Okay, so it is not considering the suite. Okay, so suite should be end here. We are ending it. Okay, so that's a tag issue. I mean, like we closed there itself, so that is the reason why it is throwing. Now you see, URL will be passed from the XML file. Okay, this is what dynamically we are handling. We are not hard coding anything. Now code looks very clean. So here when you go to this execution, need not to worry, it will do the execution. So we don't have anything in this. Did we hard code anything here? We did not hard code anything. Okay, these are like optional parameters. And you see username, password are dynamically passed here. Both of them are executing in Firefox because I have given the Firefox. Okay, two test cases are executing in Firefox. Now you can see the run execution. One is like you can see what are the parameters we are supplying here. The 3 parameters that are supplied. So here also we got the 3 parameters that are supplied. So here you can see code looks very clean. Username and password is not known. Okay, until unless this is like an optional parameter. So if it is like optional, like if you want to set the optional, you can set the optional. Otherwise, you can just pass it from XML file as a parameter. What are you passing as a parameter? URL, new name, and password. Okay. So these things also we can make it as like I'll show you next class. How do we exactly do this? Okay. So this is all about like parameters and optional parameters, guys. Let's go and discuss about like how do we handle this enabled and disabled. For example, I want to execute this particular test. Okay. So this particular test and the other test like test2 I want to disable. So what you need to do is like you need to add a tag called enabled is equals to true. Okay, so true will execute, and if you set false, then it's going to skip that. See. Only test1 will be executed, test2 will be skipped. See, first one got executed. And the second 2 test cases that we have defined, right? So one is like it's going to execute, the other one will be skipped. Okay, enabled is equals to, I'm setting it as like false. Okay, so this is one way of handling it. For example, if we have the same test case that if you want, like if you want to control the test cases from like execution from this particular XML file, you can use this flag. Okay, so enabled is equals to true or false. If you want to do it here, Okay, if you want to do it here, we can add like another tag called enabled is equals to true. Okay, so for example, I'm going to have a number of test cases here, two number of like another test case that we are having here. I'm going to use that as like login one. Okay, here I'm going to say it as like false. So in this case, what happens is like two tests are there. Okay, so it has to execute like two tests, it has to execute. For example, if you set it as like true, now you see, so it will execute 4 times. Okay, so better we can just ignore this skip like in a thread so that we can save our time now, execution time. Like 4 browsers will be 4 times a browser will be open. For the test one, it will open 2 times, and for the test 2, it will open 2 times. Okay, so if you want to handle execution of the test at XML level, then you can go and use the flag enabled is equals to true or false. Okay, disable, enable or disable. So in that case, you can use that. Okay, enable is like true. Disable is like enable is equals to false. We'll close it. Now it will open another browser. Likewise, it will open 4 browsers. Like 4 times it will open the browser. Okay, 4 browsers means 4 times it will open the browser. Okay, this is the 4th time, right? So I'll go back and I'll make some changes here. It is still executing. It will show you the results here. See 1, 2. Okay, so 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and the 4th time it is executing. It will show you the 4th results. Okay, all 4 are executed. Now I want to handle this. If I am say false, now go and execute this one. Though we have said here, we did not set anything here, right? So what happens? Let's see. It will execute 2 test cases, but here this test will be skipped. Okay, this is part of our execution. So 2 tests will be executed, but at the annotation test dot whatever we are putting here, so that will be skipped. Only 2 browsers will be opened. 2 times browser will be opened. So we can handle the execution at at the test, and we can handle the execution at the XML files. First time it is executing, right? So it will execute it. So test 1, login. Login 1 is skip now. Still it is executing. Okay, so do you see this now? See, I'll show you. So test 1, login. Test 2, login. But login 1 is skip because we are setting enabled is equals to false. Okay, so this is a flag which will help you to enable or disable the particular test. Okay, so this is one thing. And another thing is like, see, we discussed about like enabled and disabled. Okay, so if you want to enable a particular test case, you can set it as like enabled equals to true. And here also we can set enable flag. Okay, and the thing is like if you want to explicitly handle this, for example, if you don't specify anything, so it will be like enabled is equals to true. By default, it is enabled is equals to true. So now it's like I'm going to add one other tag called always run is equals to true. Okay, I'm setting enabled is equals to false and always run is equals to true. Okay, so we'll see that which one will take the priority. Okay, this is the another tag that we can add, like another attribute that we can add. Okay, so what are the attributes that we have here is like you can see. Go to this. Yeah. Here you can see. Always run is like before method after set. So if set to true, the configuration method will be run even if one or more methods involved previous failed or was skipped. Okay, so this generally what we do is like if you want to establish some connection, database connections, or if you want to close the browser, in that case, what we do is like we are going to set this one as like always run is equals to true. Okay, but in conjunction to this, if you are writing something, okay, something is failing, it will still go and execute that. Okay, so I'm going to say that here I'm putting enabled is equals to false and always is equals to true. Which one? It will take the priority is like we'll go and check it. Okay, so if always is equals to true, sets the priority, like takes the priority, then it's going to execute the test case, though the enabled is equals to set as like false. Okay, so always run is like it will take the highest priority among all the attributes that we are setting as part of test. Okay, so login is executed. Now, if we are setting always is equal always run is equals to true, then it should execute login one also. See here what is happening now. Do you see this? What is happening here? The test one, test two. Okay, let me just check this one. Oh, it's my bad, guys. Actually, this will be helpful when we are running about like something that has like depends on methods. We'll discuss about these things little later. I'm sorry for this. I'll take my words back. Actually, the thing is like always run is equals to true will be set in case if we have some depends methods. Okay, I'll show you how do we exactly set it. So always run, then generally why do we use it? Like for example, if we have something stuck in between, and here you go always like after method always run is when you say always run is equals to true, this particular method will execute and close that particular browser. Okay, so in that case you see we have executing like parallel execution is done. So in that case what we do is like we are going to invoke number of drivers there. Okay, so Firefox, Chrome, and like Edge browser. So in that case what happens is like when we set this always run, we don't set always run at this level. Okay, so at this level generally we don't do it because always run is like kind of establishing some database connections or closing the connections. It's kind of like finally block in the try clash. Okay, so finally block if you though you some other dependent test cases are failing, this always run what it does is like it will execute the test case and it will still like execute that particular functionality within the test, though the dependent test cases are failing. Okay, for example, if login is failed, I don't want to close that particular browser. Okay, so let me do one thing. I'll just try to here I'll put 1 2 3. Okay, so this is like it's not working, so I'll go here before method after method, sorry. So always run is equals to true. So I'm setting this one as like always run is equals to true. Let me just put this enabled is equals to true. So if you don't set anything like an enabled is equals to true, by default it will execute. Okay, so if you set enabled is equals to false, it will consider that false statement. Okay, so let me just execute this one, guys. Now in first test we have a problem, right? I'm giving submit 1 to 3. In second test it will execute properly, but we have to close that browser. Okay, we have to close that browser. First, I'll do one thing. I'll just stop it. I do not set any flag here first. Okay. So let me just go to this. Where is that? Go to base class. I will not set anything here. We'll see the execution. Okay. So we'll see one execution at a time. I'm just commenting this piece of code. Okay. I want to execute this particular test. I'm putting test submit 1, 2, 3. I'll go here and try to execute it. If we open the browser, enter admin 1, 2, 3, then it will wait for that particular submit button. Okay. Okay. Now do you see what happened? Here we have a browser open and here we have another browser. Okay. Two browsers are running. So they are not closed yet. Okay. They are not closed because the reason is like, you see, we'll see and we'll go and see now. See, there is another browser which is open. Okay. So the reason is like, why it is not closing it here? I'll close it. Now we'll see. It is opening another browser. Let's see what happens in this case. Here also we have that submit button, but we have given the invalid ID. That's nothing but XPath. So it is not finding that. Okay, it will wait for 30 seconds and it will throw the exception. Here you see what is happening here. See, type browser contact window global is null. Okay, this is different. Actually, I closed it. That's the reason why it is not able to find it. Okay, but here you can see there is a one exception that it is showing. See, find elements button type 1 to 3 is not visible. Okay, finding element. Okay, let me just go and see what is that exception it is showing here. Yeah, so we got the exception here also. Yeah, see what is happening here. It's like no such element exception. It will throw you no such element exception. Scroll down. Let me execute it again, guys. Let me execute and see. I'll not close this time because we have given the implicit wait 30 seconds, right? It is taking that time to find that element. If that element is not found, it will throw no such element exception. Okay, we are discussing both like enabled, disabled, and disabled is like there is no disabled. Only thing is like when we have setting the enabled is equals to false, that is disabled. It is trying to find that submit button. Just closing that. Because we have given after method. After method, if whatever happens, it will just close the browser. Okay, let me show you another example. Depends on methods and depends on groups that better works with the always run is equals to true. Okay, so when do we use this always run is equals to true is like when we want something to be executed. For example, if test one, there are two tests. For example, we have 5 tests. Okay, so on like one test is like dependent on other test. Okay, if test 1 passes, test 2 should be executed. If test 2 passes, then test 3 should be executed. So in certain cases, what happens is like test 1 fails, but still we want to execute the test 2. Okay. For example, I'll show you one thing. Easy. But this is like little advanced now. So I'll do one thing. Try to put here. I just want to discuss these things when we have like depends on method. Depends on method is equals to login. Okay. If this method executes properly, then only I'm going to execute this particular test. Okay. So now you see we have submit 1, 2, 3. First, we'll try to run this. I'll just remove this particular test for now. Okay. So because just we want to execute only one test at a time. So we have set enabled is equals to true, and here we depends on methods we are setting. Okay. So let me go and execute this now. So if one first test passes, then I'm going to result is URL is required. Setting URL. Suite level we are setting test 1, test 2. Set exception this time. Parameter URL is required if the test done. Method login, but not mentioned. Optional. We are setting it. Let me just go here and see. URL. We have URL. Okay. So let me just execute from this. So I try to execute it from the class. So it is a reason it's not getting that URL. Okay. So I need to, if I'm passing parameters, I need to execute it from the XML. Now the first test passes, then only second test will be executed. It depends on methods is like that second test is depending on the first test. Okay. So in that case, see, now it is executing this second test. Okay, so this is fine. Two test cases are passing. Let me do one thing. I'll just change the value. Okay. Now it is like depends on the first test case. Okay. Second test case is depends on the first test case. But first test case will fail because we have given the invalid XPath, submit XPath. Now you see what happens. It will skip the execution of the second test case. In this case, I want to execute the second test case also, though the first test case is failing. In that case, what I'm going to do is like I'll put the always run is equals to true. Now you see it is searching for that submit button, it will fail. Okay, this works in conjunction with depends on groups, depends on methods. Okay, so this will help you to execute though the test is failing. Okay, depending on that particular test is failing. A lot of things, guys. So I just tried with conjunction with enabled actually. Enabled is taking the priority. There could be some changes actually. Now you see, second is skipping. It will say that through method selenium login. See, this is like depends on not successfully finished method. Okay, so not successfully finished method because this is not finding. So here, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to set always run is equals to. Now we'll see the difference. So next topics are like we'll be discussing about like depends on method, depends on groups, creating the groups, executing the groups. Okay. See, after that we have things like parallel execution. How do we execute browser like same set of test cases in different browsers at the time. Okay, it is like sequentially we are executing it, right? There we are going to execute at a time. Now it is like waiting for that element. You wait for 30 seconds. After that, it will open a new browser. See, earlier it was not working, right? So it was not executing. It said like skip. But now it is passing. Like why it is passing? Always run is equals to true is the attribute that we have set. Okay, so this is passing. Now you see, we have two test cases. First one, it will say failed. Okay, expected condition is failing. But second one, it is executing. Do you see this? So earlier it was not executing. The reason is like now we have set the property always run is equals to true. Okay, this works well with depends on methods and depends on groups. Okay, if any of the groups are failing, any of the methods are failing, still you want to execute this test case, then in that case we go into give this enable always run is equals to true. Okay, enabled is like taking the higher priority. Sorry guys, this is like there are a lot of combinations actually, valid and invalid combinations. Okay, so still it will allow you to give like always run is equals to true. Okay, so there is no restriction for that, but runtime it will take care of it. It will not throw any error. Likewise, you can give. Okay, there are other things. Okay, invocation counts, invocation timeout. So we can give a lot of things here. Okay, so invocation timeouts, 30 seconds. Okay, so likewise, we can give a lot of things here. Another one is like depends, skip, ignore, skip failure invocation, and set true. Okay, so a lot of these properties that we can set, we'll discuss about these things. Okay, but the thing is like when you say this enabled is equals to true, then it will execute. If you set false, it will skip that. Okay, otherwise the other thing is like it's like by default enabled is equals to true. For all the tests we have like by default enabled is equals to true. Okay, so depends on method we'll discuss. So the other test is like yes, now we see if you want to ignore some test execution. Okay, so if you want to ignore the execution, so those you have though you have set like always run is equal to true. Here if you want to ignore, okay, so this is not a good combination all the time. We should not set any thing like which have like contradictory. Okay, now you see I'm setting is like ignore. Okay, I'll remove all these things. Okay, let me just remove this. I don't want to confuse you guys. So yeah, now you see I want to ignore this test execution. Okay, I want to ignore this test execution. Okay, this particular test, only one test case I want to ignore. Now you see, go and execute. What it does is like it will ignore that. Whenever you are adding any annotation, ignore annotation, so it's going to ignore that. Okay, so we'll see the documentation of that. How does that exactly work? Okay, so here you can see it is not showing up anything. Okay, but what is that ignore? So these are the things that we can set at test level. Okay, so let me just go with ignore annotation. Well, I'll just search for that. Ignoring test. Okay, so if you want to ignore the test, then you can put this annotation. Okay, so for example, if you want to ignore a particular test case, then what you can do is like you can set the ignore. Okay, so at this test you can set the ignore. But in case like where can we set this ignore is like we can set it child level with that's the method level. We can put it class level. We can put it the package level also. Okay, package is nothing but it will ignore all the classes which are there inside that package, and it will just try to execute. Like if you want to ignore all the packages, then also we can use that ignore. Okay, so ignore is like if you want to ignore this particular test case, you can put this particular and annotation at the test. Okay, so now it's like I want to ignore the whole class. Then what you want to do is like you can put it here. Okay, now you go and try to execute this. See what is happening now. So no test case has been executed. Okay, so but if you want to ignore this package, complete package itself. Okay, so for example, this test package, then what you have to do is like this is very simple. So to ignore any test, we have to put that annotation at the test level. If you want to ignore any class, you can put the annotation at the rate ignore at the class level. But if you want to ignore the package, okay, it will not allow. Okay, here it will not allow. If you want to try to put this annotation, it will throw the error. Okay, for this, what you have to do is like you have to create a simple file called package-info. Okay, that Java, but directly it will not allow you to create that one. So what we are going to do is like we are going to create a sample. file. Okay, right click on this package, go to new, and you can create a file. And this file, that what I'm going to do is like I'm going to name it as like package hyphen info Java. Okay, so here I'll put the annotation. And what is the package that you want to ignore is like this is a package that you want to ignore, right? So you can put this. So when you try to execute this now, see it is ignored. But we did not define any ignore here in this class, right? So we are defining in the package. If you try to execute anything, for example, go here and what we have testng with test, right? So testng with the test. So what are the classes we have? Testng XML 1 to 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, these 3 classes that we want to execute. Now we'll go and try to execute this. See what is happening now? It is ignoring. The package is like here I'm putting a file name package hyphen info.java. So what it is doing is like it is ignoring all this, like whatever we have inside, whatever classes we have inside this testng will be ignored. You try to execute any one of these things now. See assertion example is this. Here we have this, right? Try to execute it. See it will ignore. That is nothing but it will not allow you to execute this particular classes within the package. Okay. So how do we ignore now? So I'll just delete this one. Otherwise, it will not allow me to execute any setup. Okay. Otherwise, I'll just give some invalid package. Okay. Something I can give so that and test. This package is not there, so that is the reason why it is not allowing me to do that. Okay. So I will delete this one. Otherwise, I'll put it here. What you can do is like, guys, you try to execute this particular classes from this package and try to see what is happening over there. Okay. So one is like you can ignore the test by putting this ignore annotation. Okay. So you can ignore the classes by putting this ignore annotation at the class level. You can ignore the classes within this package using the ignore annotation. It is separate file. That's nothing but you have to create package info.java. So this is a file that you have to create. Okay. So guys, please practice this and let me know if you have any doubts. That we have covered a lot of things today. So tomorrow we'll meet and we'll try to discuss other things. Okay. So I'll again recap few of the things like whatever we have discussed today. First is like we discussed about parameter setting at suite level and test level. And why do we use this annotation? Optional annotation is like if you are not setting any parameters at suite level or test level, then it will take the optional values. Okay, optional should be put at the test level. Okay, not in the XML. We have to put it in the class file. So enabled disabled is like by default we can have this any test is like set as like enabled. But in case if you want to set the test execution, the XML, you can put the attribute as like enabled is equals to true or false. So that will enable or disable. And you can set the same thing at the class level also. At that annotation, there you can set the enable or disable. And next is like we discussed about ignore. So if you want to ignore particular test, we can use the ignore annotation. Okay, at the test level. Want to skip the execution at the class level, you can put the ignore at the class level. If you want to skip the execution, like if you want to ignore all the packages, then you can create package -.java file. In that you have to specify the package name and give the ignore annotation. Okay, it will ignore the things. And always run is equals to true if you want to execute some test case which is like dependent on the failed test cases, and that test case should be executed always. In that case we have to put always run is equals to true. Okay, so we have discussed always run is equals to true also. Okay, so tomorrow we'll be discussing about how do we create groups. Okay, so groups, run them, running groups, and we are going to see depends on methods. And depends on groups. And then we see like running the groups, and yeah, again we are going to see that always run is equals to true. Okay, so with conjunction with groups and methods. Okay, so these are the topics that we'll be discussing tomorrow, and probably it will take 2 more days or three more days to complete this test engine. Okay, after that we'll be discussing about like parallel execution. Okay, parallel execution. After that we are going to see that how do we handle this failure cases, and how do we capture screenshots, capture screens, and generating reports. Okay, generating reports, and see how exactly we are going to project these reports. Okay, so depends on methods like group dependencies, and then we have like data provider base. Okay, so then we have like data provider. After that data provider, we will be using some conditions. How do we handle this condition? So data provider is like very important. Okay, so data provider, let's see all the things with the help of like data provider. So this is nothing but data driven testing. Okay, we'll take Excel file. Excel file will be passed as like parameter to the data provider. Data provider will be passing as like a values to the test. So we'll see that how do we exactly do it. Okay, so after completing these things, then we'll go with the data provider. Okay, so thanks for your time, guys. Let's meet tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I have one doubt to ask. So can you please state?
Yeah, please go ahead.